Hello. This is Thermaltake's A700 and it is a rather large case. I don't know how large it's going to be after we get out of the box, so let's start with the unboxing.
Yeah, you're going to need some help with this.
So this is a bigger version of a case that I believe came out earlier this year. Let me think. Yeah, it's the A500 that already came out this year.
This is a full tower.
This is definitely a full tower. You might want to even say that it could qualify as, I think what Corsair called theirs is like a super tower.
All right, let's get this on the table.
Yeah, it's got on the table. Ugh, it's massive.
All right, we did it. We got it out.
It is a large case. Sometimes I can't tell from the box. I think it's going to be large, and then it turns out to not be large. Yeah, so this is an aluminum tower, which is why it's not as heavy as we thought it was going to be. We are treating it with care because it has 2 tempered glass sides to this. Ta-da! Pretty hefty case. It fits up to EATX. It's what Thermaltake is calling a fully modular design, which means that you can kind of take out pieces. I think the only piece that you can actually move though is the drive cages, and you can only move this like vertically along that.
What came in this box?
So these are going to be your screws. Oh, they even include a speaker. There's old school types that like hearing post beep codes. So you got screws, zip ties, your manual. Okay, so take a quick look at the manual, and then we'll just start tearing this bad boy down. So before we actually tear down, I wanted to do a quick size comparison just so you have some context for how big this case is relative to a couple of the others that we recently unboxed and tore down. So here's the Cooler Master H100. We did this I think in early July. This one's a mini ITX case. It has a 200mm fan on the front for context. And then we have the NZXT H510 Elite, which is a mid-tower, a little more on the compact size. This one looks kind of large compared to that, but it's actually a normal sized mid-tower, even though it's more compact, compared to today's Thermaltake A700.
Ooh-wee, I think we could fit one of those in there.
We could. I think I liked your way of putting it earlier, which was that you could fit at least 4 adult cats inside the A700.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So here's your size comparison. We're going to cut again to the actual teardown.
All right, let's tear this sucker down.
Yeah, let's do it. First things first is that I have to get the keys.
Keys?
Yeah, so apparently this door requires use of the included keys to get in and out.
Okay, yeah.
I'm a little concerned because I never kept a diary when I was a kid, and one of the reasons why is that I always kept losing the key. So we'd start a diary and then it would just kind of get stuck in the time capsule because I wasn't particularly good about remembering where my keys were. So these doors on both sides are mounted on hinges, which is nice, and you can just remove it by lifting up.
Okay, so they're not locked in.
No, you've got these pins.
Nice.
To kind of keep it there. And these doors are kept in place by magnets in the front as well.
Oh,
so it doesn't go swinging around if you accidentally leave it unlocked. Thermaltake tells me that you can pretty much pull out everything, and in looking at this case a little bit between the jumps here, it is the case, and in some cases you actually have to pull things out to install. So it's not as straightforward as I personally prefer. I'll go over this as we're tearing down, but I actually think that this isn't quite as nice as I would like to see out of a $350 case. Yeah, like so right here, some of the paint kind of smears a little bit. I'm a little afraid to try to buff that out because I don't want to actually pull off the paint from the correct parts. In fairness, this is an early sample that we're getting, so hopefully the final products that are rolling out after launch won't have this, because I also, like, I don't know if you can see it, but I still have like a lot of dust on my fingers right now. I kind of pulled a lot of it out, but like if you just rub in there, you can just kind of, it just gets over everything. So again, this might just be an early engineering sample. but I thought I would mention that. So let's start with the kind of the claim to fame of this case, which is the support for vertical GPU mounting. So this case comes with like a support bracket here, and so that way if you wanted to mount your GPU vertically, if you wanted to do it like this, you have a system in here that kind of supports the weight. Included in the box are essentially like these little shims. Let's see if I have the right height. And they come in 2 heights. So you can either, if you choose to use the PSU shroud, the shorter height, you kind of wiggle in there, get in there, and then screw in. Sorry, I think it faces this way. You screw it in there, and that way it just supports the weight of the GPU, and you don't have to worry about sag like you might have to worry in other cases. If you choose not to use the PSU shroud, then you would use this longer shim and just stand it right on top of the power supply. And as we're pulling things out, I'll show you what that looks like. The one thing that I also kind of feel is a little bit of a bummer that at $350 they don't include the actual like riser cable to connect the GPU to the motherboard. That's an accessory you still have to pay for, which I think...
They're surprisingly expensive.
Yeah, so if you get the 200 millimeter length cable version, that's like about $30. I think if you need another extra 100 millimeters, then that jumps up to what, like $60?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I assume that 200 millimeters should be enough for most builds. So this works so that it comes horizontal, which is the standard way of installing for most people. But if you want to do a vertical mount GPU, this whole bracket comes off, rotates 90 degrees, you put it back on. And there's actually quite a few screws here, so I think there's 5 of these little screws holding this part in place, and 2 thumb screws holding this plate over that in place. One thing I noticed with this case too is that the threads are a little bit tight. It's not as smooth as some other cases I've used. Just a small, tiny nitpick on my part. I tend to notice that a little more than other people just because I have a little bit of tendonitis in my wrist, so the smoother the thread, the easier time I have with building. Okay, so this comes off first. It's just kind of wedged in place a little with that right there. And then this slides out from these 2 right here where it hooks in. And as you can see, you could just rotate 90 degrees for a vertical orientation like this. Pop this in here, push down to seat it, and then you can screw it back in. I'm only going to put just a couple of screws, just for example's sake. That goes there. This orients this way now. And we just put the 2 thumb screws back in. But I'm not going to do that, actually, because I want to try to show you how this vertical orientation looks. Assuming you have everything set up properly, I don't have the actual riser cable and all that stuff here, so I'm not actually positive that this is in the correct position. It might not be. It's a rough approximation. Look like this. And then this would help hold it up. So that's how that works. So for the power supply shroud, in order to get the power supply in, unless you're willing to pull all this out instead, these 2 hard drive cages, I think you could pull it out this way and then try to put the power supply in that way, but I find that actually a little more of a pain than to just pull this shroud out. It attaches with 5 screws. There's quite a few of them. There's 1 here and then 4 in the back. Actually, it's 6 screws. That one got stuck. And there's only just a little bit of a lip right here to kind of hold this in place. This just butts right up against this side, and that's what all the screws are holding in place. And there's actually a window here. So I guess if you have like a RGB power supply, you could see it if it was logo based. So this case does come with little rubber stands for the power supply. And they've got like sticky tape right there. I'm not going to peel them, but you know, they would just go right here.
Oh, that's nice.
And that takes up some of the room because If you don't do that, then if you use the taller shim, it's still not quite tall enough. We have a nice firm hold with that. There you go. And our power supply isn't super large, so this, as you can see, there's still some clearance if you have a beefier power supply that you need to fit in there. Alright, so next up we're just going to look at some of the places that you can put drives. In the front here on this side, as you can see, there's a spot right here for 2.5 inch drive. And then you obviously have these 2 hard drive cages here that hold up to 4 3.5 inch or, you know, 2.5 inch drives as well.
It looks like it's missing some screws.
Yeah, it looks like it is. I didn't take it out, so they might have forgotten to put those in at the factory.
Huh.
Yeah, I think this is just an early engineering sample that we got, which might explain why it's, you know, dusty and the threads aren't quite so smooth as I would have expected for a case of this price. But yeah, these are the only things in this case that actually can be moved as opposed to just straight removed. So you can actually move this, the positioning along here, you know, for wherever you would like it to be. One thing they did mention to us, so one of their sample photos is, you know, they have the motherboard in place and they have 360 millimeter, you know, radiator to go with the all-in-one cooler on the CPU, and it's actually facing this way. They mounted it this way, not on the top, not on the front, but right here. And they said that if you're going to do that, obviously you have to kind of remove these for clearance and also for airflow purposes. So then you would have to put all your drives on the back here. There's 1, 2, 3, and these all are removable so that for easier mounting. So yeah, you can either put a 3.5 inch drive this way or 2.5 drives side by side this way. Outside of that, mostly it's just these that you can pull off because, as you can see here, like everything else is riveted. So if you're actually looking for a fully, you know, something that's easy to mod, you know, paint and all that, you're going to still have to pull out all these rivets. In terms of mounting fans, so the back here included is a 140 millimeter fan, and the front another 140 millimeter fan. These top and front sections accommodate up to 3 120 fans, 2 140s, and up to 2 200 millimeter fans. For the top, they actually included some extra brackets as well for the 200 millimeter fans that you can use when you're mounting that. Getting these off are actually quite easy. So yeah, you can just put fans here. Obviously it accommodates a rad as well, a radiator for any, you know, liquid cooling. I'll try it. Oh, that one went well. Adam was noticing earlier though that the paint colors don't quite match between the top and the front panels on this particular case, and again, I'm starting to think that this is just an early model. So this comes off.
Oh, so you can pull off this whole...
Yeah, it makes it easier to get the fans mounted, the fans and a radiator if you have both. And again, this accommodates up to 320 millimeter fans, 2 140 millimeter fans, and 2 200 millimeter fans. As I mentioned earlier, they have this set of brackets to go with the 200 millimeter fans if you're mounting them to the top. Also in the front here, as you can see, the inputs, the ports. So we have 2 USB 2.0, 2 USB 3.0, and then we have 1 Type-C, which is USB 3.1, but it's only Gen 1 speed, as far as I can tell, based on the actual cables that plug into the motherboard. So that's just 5 megabits per second speed. That's just the same as USB 3.0. And then obviously you have headset. And that's about it for this case, honestly. You do have dust filters right here at the bottom. None for the front, none for the top though. Just for the bottom here. So that does it for this particular teardown. It's It's an interesting case. It's, you know, fairly large. It's wider than the A500, which is the smaller version of this case. One of the reasons that they did that, Thermaltake said, was that some people had been concerned about the vertical GPU mount style not getting enough airflow because it was going to butt up so close to the tempered glass panel on the A500. So for the A700, they made it wider so you would get more clearance on that. For $350, I don't know if it's as much of a value as some of the other cases on the market, but yeah, outside of that, I'm not really sure how it'll do for thermals, not really sure how it will do for noise. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be testing it for that, so this video really is just about getting inside of it, taking a look, seeing how it, you know, lays everything out and how easy it is to get into it.
Cool. Thanks, Alaina.
Yeah, catch y'all later.